What's that?
We'll get him to take a picture of all this together.
Need help?
Like my arm. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but what is your first name again?
My name is Willet.
Willet, that's right. You give me a business card,
Real quick, make sure you grab these trees as you're going up. This is kind of steep.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I have any left in my pocket. If I have one, I'll give it to you. If not, I can give you my name and number and email.
Yeah, we give it to you. It's probably
And hold of this, Troy.
Yeah, this tree.
I remember. Yes, ma'am.
Don't grab a hold of this one. It's got stickers on it.
I was keeping the...
Oh, wow.
You'll get this old one day too. The pits that you all saw on the sides of the mound are animal burrows, except for this. This is one that was dug by a guy when he was younger. He's the one that Bobby put me in touch with, but there is at least one burial here underneath the soil, and we're at the upper face of the mound here. This is the section that would have had the chief's residence. What we came up is what is left is a ramp on the eastern face that's facing the sun, west, and then north and south. Had a question earlier about how we know that this mound is a platform mound. Typical platform mounds are going to have the four faces oriented with the cardinal directions. They're also going to have, if you dig one of them, which you should not do, but where excavations have happened, they have ones that are chiefly sites have like a layer cake appearance. They have basically layers, because what happened is when a chief died, he would be buried or she would be buried, because there were female leaders as well in the mound. The chief's house would be burned, and then they would put a cap of clay usually over the top of the area where that had happened, and then a new chief would build their residence and the cycle would start over again. At Lake Jackson mounds, you know, which everybody is familiar with, when Calvin Jones did his excavations there, his sidewall profile and some of his excavations looked like a layer cake. You just had layer after layer after layer because you had many leaders there for a long period of time. But this is the area where you would have had the chiefly leader of the site. That is the area where most of the occupation that looks like houses was. We have some over on this side, on the south side too. And then that east area over that direction is where you have areas where it looks like they were making stone tools and other things, although there's some pottery in that open field over that way also. So this is a big site. I mean, it covers quite a number of acres, and there were a lot of people living here. The other mound site, the smaller one that is probably a burial mound, it's not a platform mound, is that way about a mile, and it's called the South Mound site.
So is that just like a flat ground area then?
You mean here or over there?
Well, not here, over there. My question for here is, does it start off in a hill and just keep going up as the chiefs die, or does it start from the flat ground?
Yes, ma'am. The first leader is usually going to build a mound where they've dug down or got a core down to the base. You usually have a small mound, and then when that person dies, the mound gets a little bigger on all sides and bigger and bigger. Part of the reason Lake Jackson, the big mound, is as big as it is because it had been lived at for so long. You know, you got people there for several hundred years, and the original mound was probably smaller than this one at Lake Jackson, but it grew, you know, to the size it did because the lineage was there. The people who were part of the chief's family were there over time.
So the people that were here pretty much were, when did they leave this area?
Well, the Asile, if this is the site of Asile and the people of Asile, they stayed in this area right up until your ancestors, you know, fled to Louisiana at, you know, the close. Yes, ma'am. Because the Asile are still referred to in the historical record right on up to the time of the destruction of the Apalachee missions. So they may not have used this specific site much after a certain point, but they used this site cluster in this area right on. We have found over at South Mound some pottery that's called Mission Red Filmed, which is made by Native Americans that converted to Catholicism. So that site you probably had people living at in the 1600s. You may have had some people living over here, but a lot of times with the older sites, you just had people that kind of kept them as monuments, and left them alone, and then lived in other areas nearby. And so far, the evidence suggests that may have been what they did here.
You guys said you guys found cores down there.
Yes.
That's awesome.
We found pieces of worked chert. We found flakes. We found some tools. We found at least one Pinellas point at this site.
Cool.
Very similar actually to the ones that were found over on the far side of the road. But I just...
You found human fragments in here?
I did not. I don't dig in a mound unless there's absolutely no other way to preserve it. But the man who dug here like 50 years ago when he was a kid that created this has never touched it again. And the owners, Bobby included, have kept it protected or preserved. And he wanted to come forward and tell me what he had done because he wanted to try to make sure the site got protected. But he said that there is at least one burial underneath here, and there may be others.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's our thing, like with our ancestors, we know they're buried there, but at the same time we don't want to disturb their resting area, because it is a burial site. Yes,
We
you'd
could do
like
ground penetrating radar, but the problem with this one, ma'am, is that you can see how thick this plant cover is. We'd have to clear all of that off to be able to do it. And that's part of what has kept this site, from being messed with, because nobody really knows it's here.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'd love to know the history of it, but at the same time we don't want to disturb it. So that's where we're at.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I want to get a
How
picture.
far down can the machine penetrate? Or does surface penetrate?
Ground penetrating radar can go down 4 to 5 meters, which is going to be about 15 to 16 feet.
So you could see multiple layers in a mound.
We could
possibly.
see features that might be part of multiple layers. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you go from the side and penetrate?
It depends. You could theoretically run the ground penetrating radar that way, but I've never had that specific question, asked. I suspect you could, though.
Yeah, that's, there's just so much up in that hill that's unanswered questions, that's buried there. Like, even when my great-grandfather said, we've been told that he's buried, like, here, but there's no way of knowing it because there's no mark or nothing. It's supposed to be buried there with 2 children.
And the thing is that even if you find features that look like that, unfortunately, still the only way to tell for sure there's something there is to actually dig.
Yeah.